All right, what's up, New York? How's it going? I'm Ross Vacaturo, bringing you guys the 52nd episode of the Apples to Apples podcast. It's been a minute. I say that more often than I should. But I was away. I was down to Miami / Orlando, a little bit of a Florida trip. And I missed a lot on the Mets front. So, including tonight, which that's going to be the main focus tonight. And I'll get to, I think, the Orioles series was as far back as I haven't covered just yet. You know, football coming back. Football I want to, and I know I said this on this, entering summer. I want to kind of zero in on a more consistent schedule. Kind of now it feels like a post by committee / post when I feel like it, and I don't really want it to come off like that. So, football, I'm going to try to more, mostly zero in on a regular, consistent week-by-week schedule, maybe multiple episode posts. Most likely going to have multiple episode posts, just a matter of what days I look to do them. But as far as this absence, I was away, but just overall, should have gotten an episode out, so my bad on that front. But let's just, while we're at it, dive deep into some baseball talk. We get into some Yankees, but mainly want to talk Mets here. Because currently, as I'm recording this, was it August 28th? I don't even know the exact date. I'll try to see if I can pull it up. I believe it's the 28th. 29th is an early morning of the 29th. But 28th of August, I'm coming at you, recapping the second of 3 games out in Arizona. Rubber match later tonight. David Peterson on the mound, looking to follow up what might be the worst loss of the season. Many candidates to take that title, but most likely the worst loss of the season for the Mets up until this point in the season. An 8-5 final, D-backs with the win, and a game that started off just overall not great. You talk about 4 perfect innings from Eduardo Rodriguez, who really isn't all that. Started the year off hurt. I believe the first couple months, actually, he was out, quite some time. And aside from last year, putting up a, respectable all-star caliber year for the Tigers, he has been he started off with Boston, kind of a middle-of-the-pack rotation kind of arm. Kind of found his footing more with Detroit, and in his first year at Arizona, kept off the field first couple months, but not an arm you want to go 12 up, 12 down against, but that's besides the point. They wind up getting on the score sheet, facing a 4-0 deficit. Jock Peterson driving in 2 on a homer. You have Luis Severino on the bump for you, who's been one of your probably your second most reliable pitcher all year, not named Manaea, who we'll get to later on. Sean Manaea, brilliant yesterday. Severino, he had a comebacker hit him on the side of the knee, and there was, he had to be taken out or whatnot. And I think the first couple hitters after that got on, and then Peterson drove in 2 on a homer. Corbin Carroll also had a homer. He had 2 homers on the night. We'll get to the second one in a little bit. They're down 4-0 early. And you know what? You're looking at offense, looks like it doesn't have it tonight. So far, it looks like you're basically mirroring the 4-game set you just came off of out in San Diego, which was, to be exact, an 8-3 win, both for the, in San Diego and Arizona. Mets starting both series off with an 8-3 final score. And then at least in the San Diego series, getting shut out by Joe Musgrove. First 4 innings tonight looked like, you were going to basically mirror the first 2 games of both. But 5th inning, they tack on Martinez, first hit of the night, double to the right center gap. Then you had, I think, Alvarez. No, JD had the first RBI. Alvarez had the base knock up the middle. And then Harrison Bader, of all people, they're talking about him on the broadcast. I think 1 for his last 30, and that 1 being a homer against San Diego. 2-run homer, left field. Harrison Bader ties it up. And I think a guy that, if we're being honest, I think Bader, I wouldn't say gets disrespected because, at the end of the day, he's not Ken Griffey Jr. Not trying to talk him up like he is, but he has been pretty solid for the expectations that were there when he got brought in. At least for me, when I heard, when he was coming in, they had that press conference with him and Sevy, They were trying to talk him up to be like the starting center fielder. I was like, whoa, I was a little, push back on that. But he's been great, and Tyron Taylor's another one. I kind of look at them as like a two-headed fourth outfielder, two-headed monster. And they both held their weight pretty solid, I think. Now, obviously, 1 for 30 I just brought up. That's not pretty by any stretch. But I think from aside from that, this recent skid he's been on and to break it with 2 homers, he hasn't broken it, but you know what I mean. Like, the glimmers of hope counting aside from, rather than just being, redundant singles that don't mean nothing. Bader's been solid, I think, for a bench bat and slash outfield fielding platoon, because he's still got a solid glove. He had that home run robbery earlier in the year. So Bader's been pretty solid. He's in a funk right now, but somewhat broke it tonight with a 2-run game-tying knock in the 5th. And then an inning later, Mets tie it up on a sac fly where Lourdes Gurriel drew Starling Marte. He was out by 1.5 miles, Starling Marte. But Arizona's catcher with Gabe Moreno in the IL, they got this guy, Adrian Del Castillo. I think they recently called him up. I know he had a walk-off homer in his debut. And he's been pretty solid with the bat since he's been up, but he's not great with the glove. He missed what should have been a double play by a 1.5 miles, like I said. He missed the tag, kind of shades of Gary Sanchez from a couple years ago. Just flat out missed Marte on the tag, and just like that, the Mets go up after being, perfectoed / no hit for 4 innings. And you go a couple innings, all of a sudden now fast forward to the 8th inning, and this might just be, like I said, millions of candidates throughout the season as glorious and magical with all the gimmicks and all that. There has still been room for heartbreaking losses, because you can't have a Mets season without heartbreaking losses, plural. I know every team has them, but when you're the Mets, it's just a little more heartbreaking. And this is just the icing on the cake. You got this bullpen, Phil Maton, who honestly has not been that bad, and comparing him to some of the other guys they brought in, Ryan Stanek, Brazoban, who we'll get to, more in depth in a little bit. I'm trying to think. I mean, Diekman, he wasn't a bullpen ad, but, he didn't survive the year. Adrian Hauser got released. And some of these, they brought in, and some of the products of this pitching lab, this newly installed pitching lab they brought in to start the year, guys like Nunez and the 2 Youngs, you name it. You go through the rotation. Just overall, there have been more duds than not in this pitching staff. And I brought up the rotation. I would kind of leave them, to the side aside from maybe McGill, who he is not a Sturz product. I feel like most of Sturz whiffs have been in the pen. And one that you can't blame him for no matter what is Edwin Diaz. And Edwin Diaz is an interesting case this year, because there's like so many chapters to his one story of a season. You got starting off the year, his first appearances since missing all of 23 from the WBC. He couldn't get anybody out. Then he hits the IL. Everybody's, phantom IL stint, this or that. He comes back. You're seeing more signs. He's not what he was at 22, and I don't think anybody expected him to basically repeat the numbers he put up that year. But just to see a resemblance of him being able to get batters out, it was refreshing, because you didn't have that prior to the phantom IL stint, so you had that. Then he gets cracked down with the sticky stuff ejection and Wrigley. He gets the 10-game suspension. He comes back. He's not what he was off of the IL stint, but he's also not atrocious. The command's a problem. Command has been a problem all year, and he's back to looking a little shaky. He's getting the saves. He's getting out of jams, but, he's requiring like 25 pitches an outing, and just overall, he's still not close to what he was 2 years ago. Like I said, not a carbon copy, but just to be close, and he has not been close, especially ever since the ejection. Now it feels like, I don't know if there's a specific line of demarcation, but there's a couple to point to, and I think a couple days ago with the Jackson Merrill walk-off, which, by the way, Buto has sharing that blame too, the 2-run homer to Profar as well, having that 2-0 lead evaporate in the 8th inning. And then tonight, in comes Diaz. You got already Maton walking the first 2 guys on. In comes Diaz to the 9-hitter in Perdomo, puts him on base with a free pass. And up comes Corbin Carroll, who already on the night had a homer for himself. And we're not talking about Corbin Carroll as some, power threat in this league. He's one of the most bona fide contact hitters there is in all of Major League Baseball. And yet he already has a homer on the night, which was a moonshot off Severino. Right center, they got like that second deck patio out there in Chase Field, hit it all the way up there. And up comes Corbin Carroll, bases loaded, and on the second pitch he sees a slider right down the dick, which is every single slider Diaz throws. If it's not a fastball 40 feet out of the zone, it's a slider straight down the middle. Corbin Carroll takes it deep. And in the second game in 3 nights, both against teams right in your path, and not even in your path, just up looking down on you in the standings, within reach, I guess you want to say, but now it feels like all 3 of them are out of reach, talking about San Diego, Arizona, and the Braves, who none of those 3 which lose anymore. You want to talk about, all right, the Mets split with San Diego. So far, the Mets are splitting with Arizona, and at worst aren't going to get swept, which honestly I don't think is the end of the world. I don't think it's the end of the world to stay afloat and tread water against San Diego and Arizona. Because I know if you want to make the argument, you're going to have to play them in the postseason. You're going to have to beat them if you want to, compete. A, I don't think this team's winning a World Series if they do get in, which I don't even think they're getting in now either. B, these aren't the games that you're going to circle when it's all said and done and you do fucking miss the postseason. It's going to be going 6-6 against the Marlins, Oakland Angels, and the Colorado Rockies, going 500 down the middle against those 4 garbage teams. And now you got the White Sox coming up, and I guarantee you, with a team like that as bad as the White Sox, having them, within reach, and even coming off this 7-game stretch against San Diego and Arizona, that was pretty much the make or break point in your season. Not only with, the amount of games remaining dwindling by the day, but just overall 2 out of the 3 teams possessing a wild card spot that you're looking to get, with Philly pretty much taking the division. I know there's been peaks and valleys of hope as to maybe they fall, they have a funk and the division's back in play, but Philly's going to win the division, or Atlanta now. It's not going to be the Mets. The Mets want to get in, it's going to be through a wild card spot. And with 7 games straight against San Diego and Arizona, 2 of the 3 current wild card holders, if you go 3-4, which worst case scenario they would at this point, being 3-3 right now, that's not bad on the surface. But when 2 of those current 3 losses were games in the palm of your hand and you let them slip for no apparent reason, aside from just bullpen malpractice, specifically Edwin Diaz. The 1 loss, 7-0, Joe Musgrove had your number. It happens. Musgrove's fantastic, and for some reason, he's Sandy Koufax against the Mets. He wasn't rubbing the ear. None of that. They just can't hit the ball off of him. At period, stop. That happens. When you have the 4th game against San Diego, you're up 2-0. You got the homers from JD and Vientos. You got Buto giving up the 2-run homer to Profar, and then the walk-off from Jackson Merrill, who should win Rookie of the Year, by the way. Side note, it shouldn't be Skeens. It's Jackson Merrill's Rookie of the Year to lose. And Diaz, hanging slider in the zone. Where have you seen that before? And that was, that was following the millions of fastballs all over the place. Just like tonight. And you got the win now 2 nights ago, the 8-3. Manaea throwing a gem. It's like his 4th or 5th star with double-digit Ks. He's been unbelievable. In another episode we got to talk about, they got to do everything in their power to bring Sean Manaea back. I don't know if he's an ace. Just going off the track record, he's definitely an ace this year, no doubt about it. With the stats and just overall, Sean Manaea is the ace, period, stop with this 2024 rotation. I don't know if he's an ace for me down the road, but we could have that conversation another day. But he should be in the rotation, and he was phenomenal. He's been phenomenal more often than not, and ironically, the one, I guess you want to say, bad outing he's had was against Seattle, which is the only thing that's holding that Mariner team back is their lack of offense. Speaking of lack of offense, the reason the Mets didn't get 1 win in 3 games out in Seattle was because they put up 1 run in 27 innings, and that 1 run was down like 8 in the 7th inning, a homer off the bat of Jeff McNeil. That's in the past, and I know this is in the past too, man, but the fact that if not for a phenom of a closer, just 2 years ago, this guy was taking not only the baseball world, just overall the sports world by storm. It felt like every other night at Sports Center, you saw this guy coming out. People all over the globe were watching this guy. The Narco was a phenomenon, and the song Narco. The funny thing is that didn't even come out in 2022. That song had existed for years, and a closer for the sad ass New York Mets made it popular. And people were, like coming around to it, and it was like becoming a trend with the Timmy Trumpet performing in person. And now Timmy Trumpet, I guess, has some blame to do with the mush, with the Maloik, talking about how he couldn't wait to do the trumpet performance for Diaz in the World Series that they never got to because their postseason went up in flames in just 3 games. Now it's looking like they're going to get no postseason whatsoever because talking about going up in flames, this bullpen, this pitching lab, every fucking metric, sabermetric stat, any method they've used to rack up solid relief pitching has just not worked at all. And honestly, the concerning part is taking a guy like Edwin Diaz, who has had a track record, maybe not in New York aside from 2022. This is looking like 2020 Diaz all over again, man. And he might be worse at this point, especially with the expectations considered. I mean, we saw in Miami, I know with Josh Bell was up until Merrill 3 days ago and now Corbin Carroll tonight. Josh Bell was the worst one for me because he came in with like a 5-run lead. It wasn't even a save situation. He still found a way to lose the game. And he did the infamous point. Thinking everything off the bat with him is a pop-up. I know Hansel Robles was notorious for that, and he wasn't moving no mountains. I know Jerry's Familia was the one in the closing spot when Hansel Robles was in town. And the sick part is, too, there is not a single shutdown closer in this league, specifically the National League. I mean, maybe you want to say Emmanuel Clase. No, Josh Hader's picked it up as of late. They're not even our problem. There's 14 other teams, 14 other bullpens you got to worry about. And, that's even lumping in Colorado, Miami. I mean, realistically, you look at San Diego's bullpen. I know they brought in Tanner Scott. I know they brought in Jason Adam. Neither one of them have been lights out since they got to San Diego. Robert Suarez has had his funks. You look at Arizona, Paul Sewell got moved out of the closer spot. That's how bad he was. All right, and who else they had? Joe Mantiply? Who'd they bring in? Dylan Floro? I mean, Jesus, Atlanta, Raisel Iglesias, he's been hurt, I think. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. He might be in, but if he is, he's not, a needle mover by any means this year. AJ Minter, I mean, come on. When the Mets had Diaz, the way he was pitching at 22, they had an advantage that no other team in the NL had. No, the Padres had Josh Hader. I know Milwaukee had Devin Williams. I don't even think they made the postseason in 22, so it didn't matter. Cardinals had Ryan Helsley, which wound up costing them that game 1 and had Philly go on to their Team of Destiny type 22 pennant-winning run that fell short against Houston. And kind of a quick comment on this Team of Destiny thing. If you didn't have the LOL Mets, same old Mets kind of gimmick that to overshadow it, I mean, the Mets have shown everything possible. Not resume. I guess you want to say they've shown everything, all the signs. That's what I'm trying to say. The 2024 Mets have shown all the signs of what a Team of Destiny is. And now we might not even get to see it on the postseason stage because of missed opportunities in games, regardless of opponent, just falling asleep at the wheel and not taking leads seriously. With the bullpen, tonight, 2 nights ago, they had the 5-0 against Oakland, which up until that point felt like the worst loss of the year by far. That was the Hawk Tua game, ironically. The Quintana giving up the grand slam to J.J. Bleday and then not being able to close that game out. I brought up the Miami game. What else? The Atlanta, I guess collectively the last 2 games of that 4-game set, not being able to close those out. The Angels game, Brazaban coming in, blowing it. Was it a 2? No, JD Martinez had the grand slam that game, I think. They couldn't close that game out. It's a long list, man. And for a team that feels like, with the Hawk Tua, that one didn't even really count. With the Grimace, the OMG, the Glizzy Izzy, the Pimp Man, Rally Pimp, you name it. All these gimmicks, it feels like a Team of Destiny on paper. And it's just the same old shit that is just so hand in hand with Mets baseball is going to prevent it from being on a postseason stage where Team of Destiny shine their light. I mean, you look at the Phillies. I mean, they fired Joe Girardi midseason. Obviously, with the Washington in 2019, that's one a lot of people highlight. They had the Baby Shark, and I was just getting a Philly, had the Dancing on My Own. This team had a song written by a guy on the team. You're telling me that couldn't have been a rally cry in the postseason, but it's not. It's not going to matter because they don't have a bona fide closer. Or they do. He's just dog shit now. Coming off the injury in the WBC, and I hate to say it, man, but I just do not think we'll ever see even shades of what Edwin Diaz was at 22. Like I said before, I wasn't expecting a carbon copy of every single stat he recorded in 22 to be repeated. I wasn't. But to see him basically revert back to what he was at 2020, just every time you see him come out, I don't even hear the trumpets anymore. I don't even think they play the trumpets anymore on SNY. It's not an experience. It's a kind of a hold your breath moment when you hear he's coming into the games. It's kind of like you got FanDuel or something. Open it up and bet against him. I think, I was looking, I think Arizona was like plus 160 when he came into the game. They were only down one, bases loaded, 2 outs. Come on, man. He got no control on a fastball. He's got a slider as flat as fucking expired milk. And this is a guy you're paying $20 million. That should be a lesson learned not to pay relievers either. I mean, you kind of had to. Coming off that, I mean, you didn't have to, obviously. But coming off that year, his numbers were inflated. If that should tell you, by the way, Pete Alonso, what he's missing out on, how to handle a contract year. Because, Jesus, Edwin Diaz, did he cash out. But it's ugly, man. It's ugly. And I think the worst part is, just overall collective missed opportunities is what it boils down to. I brought up level, the skill level of opponents, not being able to beat the shitty teams that you in all honesty should be able to beat, and more so, some teams be able to sweep. I get every team's going to win a game. I know teams like as bad as the White Sox are historically might be the worst team ever. They're still going to win some games. They're going to win, give or take 50 games. Don't be that team that gives them one of their 50 wins. Sweep a team like Colorado every once in a while. 2 or 3 is fine. When you're dropping series, that's a whole other thing. But my God, man, get that third game every once in a while. Every game's going to count. You lost out, and I know it wound up not mattering because up until this point, 2 years of the 6-game playoff format, both 6 seeds have won the pennant in the NL. But the Mets were 1 game away from having a bye in 22, and instead they were out in 3 games. And everybody says it was because they got swept in Atlanta. It wasn't because they got swept in Atlanta. San Diego's on the put. It wasn't because they got swept in Atlanta. It was because they got swept by the shitty Cubs. It was because they dropped 2 or 3 to the shitty Pirates. It was because they dropped 2 or 3 to the dog shit Marlins. That's why they didn't win the division. That's why they didn't get the wild card bye. And now this year, not being able to take 2 or 3 or sweep the Oakland A's and the LA Angels, not being able to sweep the Miami Marlins, whose payroll is a combined $14 million. This fucking closer who can't get 3 outs is making more money by himself than the entirety of a roster that took 2 of 3 games from you in a heated wild card race. I mean, just think about that, dude. And I know it's baseball. That's baseball, Susan. But don't be that team to give them that. Like I said with the White Sox. White Sox are coming up. You do not sweep the White Sox, and I think season's already over. But definitively, if you don't sweep the White Sox, A, your season's done, and B, you're showing me you're a team that didn't care. I already think you're a team that doesn't care because you half-ass your competitiveness against shit teams. Because we're seeing what kind of ball club you really are offensively, no doubt about it. And I think people look at this team's strong suit as the offense. Because you look at yesterday, piling on 8-0, and that even yesterday looked like you were going to let it slip. Thankfully, you didn't. But it's just missed opportunities are the reason this team is not going to play postseason baseball. They're now 4 games out. They still got 3 more games with Atlanta. They got a game tomorrow with Arizona. And listen, I mean, you got, I think, a series with Washington sprinkled in, set with Toronto, who's not going down anytime soon. Other than that, the easy, the low-hanging fruit, cherry-picking, shitty teams, they're pretty much out of the picture now. And you can't keep saying there's a lot of baseball to be played left. We're approaching September 1st. When is the long strand of winning going to start? I know you had it in June. That long stretch of winning was to revive the season, period. But if you want to be a bona fide postseason team, when are you going to pile those wins one by one and get a streak going? It feels like win, loss, loss. It's just a one step forward, two step back kind of process. And on the rare chance that you look at Atlanta's 10-2 in their last 12, one of those losses was the same day of the Jackson Merrill walk-off home run. So, I mean, you're essentially just gaining no ground. Even when you do win, it's just fading in the night because Atlanta won't lose, and I know that's out of your control, except for when you had the 4-game set, you couldn't have taken the series winning the first two. But, I mean, it's kind of shades of 22, man. Playing 500 ball ain't good enough because the team you're trying to hunt down is playing 750, 800 ball. And that's what it boils down to. And having some feel-good moments that I didn't get to. I mean, Baltimore series alone, 2 of the 3 games, you take 2 of 3 against an Oriole team that, yeah, they're kind of in a funk, especially their bullpen. Sir Anthony Dominguez, I mean, my God, he's worse than Diaz somehow. You have the walk-off from Alvarez, the electric celebration. Off the bat, he knew that was gone. And then Jesse Winker, I probably followed it up. I topped it off 2 days later with the blacking out going to first base. So, I don't know, man. I personally think they're dead men walking at this point, and it sucks because I brought up the whole team of destiny type thing, every sign of a team that, had nothing to lose, and they don't have nothing to lose, because if you want to look at it from if you want to, speak on this team realistically, they weren't expected to make the postseason. I mean, you want to talk about Stearns' offseason, had this team stay true to preseason expectations, guys like Severino, Minaya, and Bader, and Tyrone Taylor are probably playing elsewhere. And it doesn't mean because they were getting DFA'd, it meant because they were getting flipped for assets at the trade deadline. That felt like Stearns' plan all along. It felt like, this was not a year to compete. And there was transparency with how they were handling their moves. More of their signings than not were low risk, high reward kind of deals. Severino was kind of like the poster boy of that. And, the switch got flipped. They started winning, and I feel like Stearns last second scrapped the plan and said, you know what, let's try to shoot for some postseason baseball, bringing in Winker and then all the bullpen ads who one by one have been train wrecks. But, nonetheless, I think the competitive nature in this team got implanted halfway through. I do not think they were trying to compete. Obviously, they're trying to compete, but they were looking at it from a more realistic standpoint of, let's look long-term. And the fact that they started winning in June, July, scrapped that previous plan, and this is basically a tale of 2 different teams. And I think the team of the first 2 years, you could have gotten away with saying it's okay if they don't make the postseason because they weren't supposed to. But once June started, and the OMG and the Jorge Lopez, which, by the way, I know Jorge Lopez clubhouse culturally may have been a line of demarcation, but Jorge Lopez, the pitcher, how would you like to have him in that bullpen right now? Maybe being a plan B for a closer. But he's with the Cubs. He's pitching great, and the Cubs are winning now. Look out for them. They might be, up the Mets' ass sooner than later. And now a team, ever since June, that it was not looking big picture, was looking at the now, was winning now, and was the hottest team in baseball for around a month and a half. That's the team that when this team misses the postseason, you're going to look at that team from June onward and say, yeah, this season was a failure because we didn't make the postseason. It's a tale of 2 different seasons. I do not think this 2024 Mets team is collectively in one season. I feel like between May and June, you split it in half you cut it like a piece of cake. And these are 2 different teams. You want to have that slice and say it's okay if they don't make the postseason because we weren't going to win jack shit either way? That's fine, but I think ever since June, this has been another team, and I think anything aside from postseason baseball, I'm not telling you go out and win the World Series, because if we're being real honest, we don't have to be real honest. They're not winning a World Series if they make it or not. But if they do not bring a postseason game to this fan base, this season's a failure in my eyes. And, listen, they got a month to do it. It's not a ton of baseball by any stretch. And each passing game that they drop, the way they drop, you win these 2 games, all of a sudden 3 games behind the Braves. And 3 is one. It's a difference of 1. But being 3 games back and 4 games back, it could mean the world with 1 month of baseball left. And if they want to keep shitting big opportunities away, that's their own fault. And you know what? It's going to mean no postseason baseball. Real quick, I don't want to neglect the Yankees. They dropped 2 or 3 against Washington tonight. Carlos Rodon, another stinker. I just think every good outing he has at this point, this point forward, is fool's gold. Because more often than not, this guy has just been an Achilles heel to everything the Yankees try to progress with. I mean, everybody brings up the salary. He makes the same money as Freddie Freeman every year that he gets paid by the Yanks, and he just can't get out of his own way. He's the reason Dylan Cruz has an MLB home run on his stat sheet. First career homer for Dylan Cruz, 2nd overall pick last year. Kind of same thing with Yankees too. I mean, just missed opportunities, man. Now I know they're from a division standpoint rather than a general postseason life or death kind of deal. They are most likely making it in the postseason regardless of division or wild card, barring a crazy implosion. But I mean, still, man, dropping 2 or 3 to a Washington team that's out of it. They were in it, I'd probably say, like 2 months ago, and then they just fell flat on their face. And they're looking big picture, obviously calling up Cruz and this guy Tania, however you pronounce it. Chaparro, I think, their first baseman. They called up James Wood earlier in the year, so they're looking big picture. Dropping a series against them. They dropped the game against the Rockies. They had speaking of not sweeping the White Sox, that first game, they wound up taking the series, but that first game, they lost like 10-2. So they're dropping, golden opportunities too, but just overall, man, I mean, you're looking at the whole thing with Judge. Is he going to hit, break 62? Is he going to hit 70? Whole thing with Soto getting paid, and that's a conversation for another day. Sounds like it's down to the Mets and Yankees if he takes some money or wants to stay in the Bronx. I don't know, man. I don't think Soto's leaving. I think that Soto-Judge 2-3 punch they got is inseparable. And I think that's what it boils down to. I know the offseason conversation is down the road, but, I mean, who knows? So that's pretty much all I got on the Yankees. We'll see how that goes. Because, Baltimore hasn't been winning on a crazy stretch either. They dropped a game to the Dodgers tonight. Obviously, I brought up before dropping 2 or 3 to the Mets. Just overall, man, I don't know. I think the perfect name for this episode would be missed opportunities. But I like to have some fun with the puns and whatnot. So I don't know. But all it boils down to in New York, and in terms of New York baseball, is 2 teams that are incapable of pouncing on golden opportunities, and one is going to miss the postseason because of it, and the other one has their division lead in jeopardy because of it. And they have nobody else to blame but themselves. So the Mets, like I said, I don't think they'll be playing in October, aside from game 162 might be October 1st. Yankees will be. I don't know if they're going to get the bye or not, but 2 teams that had every chance to pounce on shitty competition and just let golden opportunities slip. And that's all I got all I got for you guys tonight. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching, following all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, YouTube. Try to put it on the link tree. With that being said, guys, thank you for listening. And I will see you next time on the Apples to Apples podcast. See you guys.